This man ripped out his girlfriend's insides because she called him the wrong name during his name is Fidel Lopez, and he's living with his girlfriend Maria. And one day they're in the closet doing, grown-up stuff, and they're doing it really rough, and Maria's really enjoying himself, and he was too, until Maria moaned another man's name not once but twice. He knew the name, he knew it was her ex, and that really hurt his ego, and he became a monster. That's literally what he told the cops. Basically, he loses it. He gets really mad and starts punching the walls. He smashes the sliding glass door. He rips the door off the hinges. Listen, I get it. I'd be upset too. But then he turns to Maria and he her so violently that she passes out. And while she's unconscious, he does something so violent I legally cannot describe it on here, but let me just say this. He stuffed multiple items, including both his fists, inside her you-know-what. He then inserts his entire arm inside of her and rips out her insides. That's all I can say for right now, but oh my god, that's so disgusting. Afterwards, he washes the blood off his arms and tries to hide the evidence, and then he steps outside for a quick smoke to relieve a bit of stress. I mean, what? Realizing what he'd done, he calls 911, and when police arrived to the scene, it was actually so bad that one of the officers had to step outside and throw up. They found Maria lying there naked, brutalized, and in a puddle of blood, like with her insides all over the floor. Fidel was immediately arrested, and in court he had the audacity to beg Mariah's family for forgiveness, but it really upsets me how he was sentenced to only life in prison. Mariah died and he gets to breathe, but I still cannot believe how
this case is so disturbing and graphic that I'll probably get banned for trying to talk about it. I'm True Crime Caitlin, and this monster is Tom Burns, also known as the Hunchback Cannibal. This case takes place in Barrow in Furness in northern England. 71-year-old Thomas Lionel Burns was a happily retired man living alone at number 32 York Street. Since his retirement, he would fill his days by sitting at his piano playing some music. It would be this music that lured two young, innocent girls to their deaths. 5-year-olds Sheila Barnes and Lavinia Murray were enjoying a lovely, warm, sunny day together, playing out on York Street. When music began to fill the air, being the inquisitive young girls that they were, they decided to go and investigate. This is how they ended up at the home of Tom Burns. When the girls didn't return home that evening, they were reported missing to the police, and quickly suspicion fell on Tom. After being caught, he would go on to confess to the absolute unthinkable. He confessed to abusing both Sheila and Lavinia, viciously murdering them, extensively mutilating them, and eating parts of their flesh. Tom would describe cutting off the foot of one of the girls and roasting it to eat it. He would end up being detained at the infamous Broadmoor Hospital, where it is likely that he stayed until he died. That is just about everything I can tell you all about this case on this app. However, I have posted a full-length episode on my podcast, True Crime with Caitlin, which is available wherever you stream your podcasts and also on YouTube.
She went to a vigil and executed her childhood friend in front of everyone. On August 4th of 2021, a candlelight vigil was being held in Crown Heights, Brooklyn. As people were gathered outside, 42-year-old Claudia Banton walked up to her longtime friend, Delia Johnson. Without any kind of warning, Claudia shot Delia in the head, execution style, and fired 5 more rounds while everyone was screaming and running. And the entire incident was caught on surveillance video. The entire community was shocked because Delia was loved and her murder was described as pure evil. Claudia had fled Brooklyn, changed her appearance, and deleted all of her social media. At first, witnesses thought the shooter was a man, but later on, detectives identified Claudia as the suspect. After a months-long manhunt, she was arrested in Jacksonville, Florida. Once the case went to trial, prosecutors argued that the killing was premeditated, cold, and deliberate. The case was especially painful for Delia's family because they had once cared for Claudia whenever she needed the help. In April 2025, Claudia was charged with second-degree murder and second-degree criminal possession of a weapon. In May of 2025, Claudia was sentenced to 23 years to life in prison.
This girl's body was found floating in a hotel water tank, and guests had been drinking from it for days. Her name was Elisa Lamb. She had taken a solo trip from Canada to LA. She booked a room at the Cecil Hotel, a place infamous for deaths, murders, and even serial killers like Richard Ramirez, but Elisa did not know that. She called her parents every single day while at the hotel, but on the morning that she was supposed to to check out. She didn't, and her parents were freaking out, so they called 911. Police bring in search dogs to look for her. They check her room, they check the roof, but they couldn't find her anywhere. Then they pull up the hotel surveillance cameras, and what they saw cannot be explained. Elisa is alone in the elevator, but she is acting completely off. She's pressing every single button. She's peeking out like she's being followed. She jumps back in and hides in the corner. Then she steps out and she starts waving her hands around like she's talking to somebody who isn't there, and then she just disappears. Fast forward 3 weeks, guests at the hotel start complaining that the water is black and it tastes weird. So maintenance checks the roof and inspects the water. They open the water tank, and what they saw is honestly horrifying, because inside was the dead body of Elisa Lam. She had been decomposing in the same water that people are brushing their teeth with and drinking from. I think I'm about to throw up. And to this day, nobody knows how she got up there. All we have is the elevator video and nothing after that. Her death was ruled as an accidental driving, but I still don't understand how.
He posted the cutest video singing Santa Claus is coming to town with his little son, then brutally murdered his entire family the next day. It was Christmas Eve 2017 in an apartment in Arizona. A family was gathered together enjoying the festivities. This was Anthony Ross, the dad, the mum Iris, and their 2 children. These were Nigel, aged 11, and the 10-month-old baby Honora. Anthony was being the typical embarrassing dad by the looks of things, you know, singing on a video on social media with his son. To everybody watching, it looked like a happy family. But the family were far from perfect. Anthony really wanted to portray this kind of ideal image. He was actually basically a celebrity chef. He was very successful doing what he did. But Iris had filed for divorce from him. She said he was incredibly volatile and she'd had enough of his controlling behavior. But despite this, Iris was the kind of person who really wanted to see the best in everybody, and she certainly wanted what was best for her children. The pair seemed to be trying to kind of co-parent together, especially due to the fact that it was nearly Christmas. Just one day later, an unimaginable horror was revealed. It was Christmas afternoon, and Iris's sister got the most disturbing text message you could probably ever get. What the hell do you do if your brother-in-law sends you a text saying, "I just killed Iris and the kids with a gun"? Now, Iris, bless her, went into sheer panic mode, obviously, as you would. She knew he was volatile. She knew the struggles that her sister had had, but she had no idea it was going to get this dark. In the run-up to Christmas, Anthony had been harassing Iris, to be honest, but it seemed like they were kind of managing to work through things and come to some kind of parenting agreement. But after these texts came through, police obviously raced over to the scene and just found something like that out of a horror film. Iris was laid dead on the patio with a gunshot wound. But the terror was far from over. Police could see Anthony inside of the property. He was clearly armed and dangerous, and a huge standoff began. Police were like, "Come outside now and hand over your weapon." But Anthony was having none of it. This went on for 4 agonizing hours. Now, bear in mind, at this point, police don't know whether the kids are alive inside or not. Finally, they were like, potentially there's 2 children in this home that we need to save. So they forced entry. Tragically, it was too late. Both of the children were dead inside of the home. Anthony was arrested at the scene, but details of what he'd been Googling prior to this were crazy. He'd looked up news articles about a man killing his family on Christmas, as well as weapons and battery acid. It transpired that his behaviour was totally crazy in the run-up to the tragedy. One minute he'd been telling his ex he was going to put a curse on her, then he was begging to have her back. He was just finally found guilty all these years later of triple murder and is awaiting sentencing.
Today's case is definitely one of the creepiest internet mysteries I've read about, and if you're watching this before bed, I'm sorry, but good luck. Selena Delgado Lopez was a young woman who went missing in Mexico in the late 90s, early 2000s. But the scariest part is nobody even knows if Selena exists at all. She had first appeared on a really popular Mexican TV show called Community Service, and it was used to help find people and reconnect them with their families. But when Selena's face popped up on the screen, all people could talk about was how uncomfortable it made them. Selena's photo was poorly lit, almost unnatural, and unlike any other missing persons case shown, there was barely any information on her, just her name, her age, and a note saying that she disappeared from Mexico on April 26th, which was kind of odd because anybody who was featured on this channel had a lot of information about them, but she didn't. Now, the creepy part is that whenever Selena's photo would pop up on the TVs would glitch out. The screen would freeze, it would flicker, and suddenly it would just cut to static. And at that point, people started saying that her photo was cursed and that Selena's spirit haunted Channel 5. A whole bunch of people started digging through her case, and when I tell you there was no public record of Selena Delgado ever existing, like there was no police reports, no missing persons database entries, nothing at all. The only thing that was tied up to her name was this creepy photo, a photo that when you line it up, it completely matched each other. But as creepy as this photo is, it is actually a composite sketch of a real life serial killer named Derek Todd Lee. He was also known as the Baton Rouge Slayer. He would stalk and watch at least 7 women in their homes before killing them, and while searching for him, the police had composited this sketch. And somehow, I don't know how, but somehow this sketch became linked to Selena's case, which honestly only created a lot more theories about her disappearance. But that's not the end of it. In 2010, Channel 5's official Twitter account began posting some very disturbing videos in the middle of the night, like sometimes captions referring to Selena. And nobody that works at Channel 5 could explain why these posts were happening, and by morning the videos would mysteriously disappear. And then something weirder happened, but this time it was like 2020. Facebook users had started reporting an account called Selena Delgado Lopez that it had suddenly disappeared, and somehow thousands of people were already following it. Nobody ever remembered following a Facebook account like that, and they couldn't even unfollow her. Like the remove friend option on Facebook, yeah, not there. Gone. I mean, people obviously panicked, believing that like this was somehow linked to her case and linked to the curse, that maybe her spirit had taken over this Facebook account. When you say it out loud, it kind of sounds bogus, but honestly, I probably jumped to conclusions myself. But I mean, it did turn out to be nothing even close to supernatural. The account belonged to a woman who just so happened to have the same exact name as Selena, and she had actually disconnected her follow button, so the option to unfollow her just wasn't there. But to this day, some people do think that Selena was a real missing person, just a very poorly documented one. Others believe that Selena never even existed at all, that Channel 5 invented her out of thin air to scare people away, to warn them about strangers. I don't know. It has literally been 24 years since this story came out, and yet we still have no answers. I hope the photo doesn't haunt you in your dreams.
This is just absolutely insane. The Twilight killers, the 14-year-old Bonnie and Clyde, they killed her entire family and then sat down and watched all the Twilight movies afterwards. To say that 14-year-old Kim Edwards and her mother Elizabeth had a strained relationship would be a massive understatement. When Kim was only 6 years old, her and her mother Elizabeth got in a fight regarding the TV, which actually led to Elizabeth punching her daughter in the face. Elizabeth did end up turning herself in to social services, and both of her daughters were in foster care for a few months before she regained custody of them. But Kim never fully forgave her mother, and this caused a long history of issues between them. Kim always felt like her mother loved her little sister Katie more than she loved her, and she not only resented her for it, she hated her mother for it. Kim was a deeply troubled girl, and things only got worse when she started dating an equally troubled, if not more troubled, 14-year-old boy named Lucas. Kim first met her boyfriend Lucas when she was walking into a classroom and he was throwing a chair across the room. What would be a huge red flag for most girls was, I guess, attractive to Kim. Lucas was an extremely aggressive 14-year-old boy. He was often isolated from the other kids at school because he would attack them. He was not popular by any means. In fact, he was like the most hated person at school. Kim and Lucas formed an intense and toxic bond, one that Kim's mother Elizabeth definitely did not approve of, and she described the couple as a ticking time bomb waiting to go off. And unfortunately, she was right, but she tried to forbid her daughter from seeing Lucas, which of course did not go well. That thing rarely goes well for normal teenage girls, so especially not Kim Edwards. She would still see Lucas in secret, and the two began to plan to unalive Kim's mother Elizabeth and her little sister Katie, who was only 13 years old at the time. And then the plan was for the two of them to unalive themselves afterwards, which I don't really understand, like if the whole plan is for them to be together. They did end up getting rid of that part of the plan because Kim said that she was afraid of the pain. But Kim did not care about the pain that her mother and her sister would have to endure on April 13th, 2016, when she snuck her boyfriend Lucas in the middle of the night and then sat on the floor outside of their bedrooms as he brutally unalived her mother Elizabeth, and her little sister Katie. She was listening the entire time, and this attack was not quick. And she was giving Lucas like words of encouragement during it. Afterwards, Kim and Lucas took a bath together, and then they slept together in the living room while her mother and her sister's bodies are upstairs. And then after that, they had some ice cream, they cuddled and watched 4 Twilight movies. It had been a day and a half since anyone had seen Elizabeth, Katie, Kim, or Lucas, so they were actually all reported missing. Police had to force themselves into the home, and when they got in, they were shocked to just see Kim and Lucas on the couch cuddling. People have been knocking on the front door of that home for 2 days. I'm not really sure what Kim and Lucas's plan was. They didn't seem to have a plan after her mother and her sister were gone. It just shows the immaturity. When the police asked where Kim's mother was, Kim told them that she was upstairs, and when they asked what had happened, Lucas coldly said, "Why don't you go upstairs and see?" Ugh. The two were immediately arrested and to this day have never shown any remorse for what they have done. Kim said that she was happy and relieved that her mother was gone and was said to be extremely cheerful while she was being questioned. Lucas did plead guilty, but Kim did not, and during her trial, she would smirk at her family. It really just shows how evil and terrifying this 14-year-old girl really is. It is believed that Kim was the ringleader, the driving force in this crime being committed, which is why ultimately they both ended up getting the exact same sentence, even though Kim wasn't the one to actually end Elizabeth and Katie's life. They both were sentenced to life in prison with a minimum of 20 years. And this is really going to upset a lot of you guys, but they both were able to successfully appeal their sentences, and their sentences were reduced to 17 years in prison. So both of them will be getting out when they're in their 30s. We've talked a lot about minors that commit these terrible violent crimes and if they should get the life penalty, if they should even be tried as adults, if we think that they have a chance of being rehabilitated. For me personally, and this is just my opinion, the fact that neither of them have ever shown any remorse, I think is very terrifying, and I believe that they are very dangerous. And I think that it is very scary that one day both of them will be released when they're only in their 30s, which is not that old at all. They're able to do a lot of terrifying things when you're 30. If you watched to end this video, thank you so much. And to say thank you, I'm actually gonna do something I've never done before. So in the past 2 weeks, I've gotten so many requests to cover 2 cases in particular. So I'm definitely gonna cover both of them, but I'm gonna let you guys choose which case I cover tomorrow. So I've gotten so many requests the past 2 weeks to cover Wade Wilson and Gypsy Rose. I'll definitely end up covering both of them, but definitely comment which one you would love to see tomorrow get covered on this account. And just, I'll probably pick whichever one I see gets commented the most or which one ever has the most likes. Definitely let me know what case you want me to cover next, and I love you guys. I'll see you tomorrow.
He disappeared from the middle of the desert only to be discovered weeks later with all of his organs missing. I'm True Crime Caitlin, and this is the case of Ryan Singleton. Ryan was a young man with big dreams from Atlanta, Georgia. He was an aspiring model, and once he put his mind to something, that was it. He was going to accomplish it. He wasn't scared to give anything a go, his mother Iris saying, quote, "Most things he tried, he mastered." In 2010, when he was only 21 years old, Ryan packed up a bag and headed for the city that never sleeps, New York City. Chasing his dreams of becoming a model, he did get his foot in the door and he became pretty successful, even eventually walking New York Fashion Week. Eventually he decided that he wanted to go into the film industry working as a producer, and so once again he packed everything up and left New York for LA. While here he met Keith Brewster, a celebrity stylist. The two men fell in love and got married. However, their relationship was a pretty rocky one. So not even a year into their marriage, the couple would separate, Ryan going back to live with his mum in Atlanta. Since his arrival back home, however, Iris began to notice that some things were a little bit strange. For example, on at least one occasion, she was out with Ryan somewhere and Ryan just gave this random girl a big chunk of money. When she asked him about it, he brushed her off. In July 2013, 2013, the mother and son had a very strange exchange. Ryan was going to be flying over to LA, where he was going to be spending some time, renting a car and going on a bit of a road trip. Before he left, he expressed to his mother that he was worried that something bad was going to happen to him. Iris tried to push him, asking why, what was wrong? Did something happen? Did he owe anybody money? But once again, Ryan brushed her off. Once he landed in LA, he rented a car and began his very long trip. On the 9th of July 2013, as he is driving through the Mojave Desert, Death Valley, Ryan's car would break down. He left it and just began wandering up and down the road until a highway patrol officer finally found him. Ryan told this officer that he was lost, he had lost his car, and he had also been attacked by an animal. He climbed into the officer's vehicle and together the two began driving up and down the roads trying to find Ryan's car, but they couldn't find it anywhere. Eventually the officer would drive Ryan to the nearby town of Bega. Ryan got out of the car and went into the petrol station. The officer didn't suspect that Ryan was under the influence of any alcohol or drugs, and he seemed just fine, and so because of this, the officer left. Ryan would use a payphone to ring one of his friends, and on the phone he was very clearly upset and distressed about being lost and having lost his car. Despite being hours away, this friend told Ryan that everything was going to be okay. Wait there, sit tight, I am coming to get ya. But when they arrived, Ryan was nowhere to be seen. After trying to locate him and not being able to, Ryan Singleton would be reported missing to the police. Over 2 months later, on the 22nd of September, a pair of hikers would discover human remains. The remains were heavily decomposed and partially skeletal. The remains would be confirmed to be that of Ryan Singleton. However, strangely, almost all of his vital internal organs were missing. This included his heart, his kidneys, his liver, his lungs, and his eyes were also missing. Where Ryan was discovered was also an area that apparently had already been thoroughly searched. So did the investigators, did the searchers miss him, or was his body placed there after the investigation? Due to the decomposition of the body and animal interference, the coroner wasn't able to determine a cause of death. As of today, Ryan's case is still an open investigation. We still have no idea what happened to him, although there are many theories. Some people wonder if he was murdered for his organs. Others wonder if he was involved in the underground world of drugs and he got mixed in with the wrong people, or if after the officer left and after Ryan contacted his friend, he decided to go on a wander, got lost, passed out due to the heat and died, and that it was animals that were responsible for removing his organs. Comment down below and let me know what you think.
This evil father married his teenage daughter and then he killed her. Stephen Plattle is literally a weirdo from day one in our story today. When he was in his 20s, he met 15-year-old Alyssa online. He lured her to meet her in person, which is illegal because she's 15 and he's in his 20s. And then he started a relationship with her, getting her pregnant. Alyssa was only 17 when she gave birth to her and Stephen's daughter, Katie, but Alyssa says that Stephen was really abusive towards their newborn daughter, and also she was struggling being a teen mom, so she made the really difficult decision to put Katie up for adoption. Katie lived an extremely normal and happy life with her adoptive parents, but when she graduated high school, she wanted to meet her biological parents, which is completely normal. But when Katie met her biological parents, Stephen and Alyssa, it led her life in a very disturbing and dark place. When Katie met her biological parents, Stephen and Alyssa, at first everything was great. Stephen and Alyssa were still together. They had an 11-year-old daughter and a 6-year-old daughter, so Katie had siblings. They were all getting together really great. So well, in fact, that Katie moved out with her adoptive parents and moved in with her biological parents. But within a few months, Katie would be pregnant. Eventually, Katie's biological mom, Alyssa, moved out of the home because honestly, her marriage was pretty rocky. It obviously had been for a while. And she was kind of suspicious about her husband's relationship with their daughter that had just come back into their lives. Alyssa was so suspicious, in fact, that she read her 11-year-old's diary, and what she found was shocking and disgusting. Alyssa's 11-year-old daughter's diary said that Katie was pregnant and that her dad got Katie pregnant. Steven is 42 years old, and this is less than 1 year since she's reached out to meet her biological parents. The diary also said that Steven wanted his other 2 younger daughters to call Katie, their big sister, their stepmom. Like, how confusing is that for children, a 6-year-old and an 11-year-old? They just met a big sister that they probably didn't even know they had, so it's already one huge change, and now this. This child literally wrote in her diary that she didn't understand how she could be Katie's daughter and her little sister at the same time. Just so sick and so sad. And imagine Alyssa reading this. Obviously, one, I'd be so mad that my 11-year-old daughter is getting involved in this disgusting mess, but your husband and your daughter, I would be physically ill. Like, I'm feeling sick right now saying it. Alyssa tried to report her husband, Steven, to the police, but they didn't do anything about it for 8 months because of course they did. And in the meantime, Steven married Katie, his daughter. She's 18, he's 42. This entire thing is happening less than 1 year since she reached out to meet her biological parents. It's foul, and not only did Steven's family members attend his wedding to his teenage daughter, but Katie's adoptive parents attended the wedding as well, fully knowing who Steven is to Katie. I cannot comprehend it at all. Shortly later, Katie gave birth to a baby boy named Bennett that would technically be her son and her brother and be Steven's son and grandson. In 2018, Katie and Steven were both arrested because this kind of a relationship is illegal. While awaiting trial, Katie kind of came to her senses and realized that she was being completely manipulated by this adult that she obviously wanted validation from. I mean, the entire thing is really, really sick. So she called up her dad and tried to break up with him. But Steven is this sick, evil coward. Words cannot describe how vile this man is, and he couldn't allow Katie moving on, I guess. So he took the lives of baby Bennett, Katie, and Katie's adopted father, Anthony. And then he unalived himself. He's such a coward. This is a senseless tragedy. And for what? If you're going to unalive yourself, why the baby, Katie, and her adopted father, who has nothing to do with any of this? And Steven has these 2 other daughters who honestly were probably so confused for so long about this situation and are still probably so confused. Truly, my thoughts are with them because I don't know how I could just grow up, especially the 6-year-old and the 11-year-old who knew so much about what was going on. You guys are definitely gonna have to leave all your thoughts in the comments. I would also say questions, but I know this entire case is a huge question mark, but definitely leave your thoughts in the comments and also leave some case suggestions for me while you're there. I love you guys so much. Thank you for watching, and I'll see you guys tomorrow.
And just when you think, oh, he can't possibly get any worse, you find out that his idol, the person that he looks up to, his role model, is Ted Bundy. Yeah, he loves him. Joel Rifkin was born in New York to 2 unmarried college students, but just 3 weeks later, he was adopted by Bernard and Jeanne Rifkin, a couple living in New York. A few years later, they expanded their family by adopting a daughter named Jan. And by 1965, the Rifkins had settled in East Meadow, Long Island, where Joel began attending elementary school. When he was a kid, Joel had a pretty hard time. He had a really hard time making friends, and he was often picked on and bullied a lot. He's been described as quite a shy kid that pretty much just kept to himself. And even though he was generally a pretty smart kid, his IQ was above average, he had a really hard time learning, and later on in his life, he would find out that was because he had undiagnosed dyslexia. When he moved on to high school, he continued to make efforts to try and feel like he belonged. He joined the track team, hoping that it would make it easier for him to make friends, but instead he was met with the complete opposite. He was bullied by his teammates heavily and constantly. Then he tried to join the yearbook staff, only to have his camera stolen and then to be left out of the group's end-of-year celebration. He also gained the nickname Joel the Turtle because of his posture Kids are so mean. Anyway, year by year, it just felt like the bullying kept getting worse. The kids were so mean to him for no reason, and in return, he began to feel really lonely and really isolated. He also had no luck with girls, which only brought his confidence levels down further. And on top of that, it wasn't only his school life that was tough. His life at home was pretty tough as well, primarily because of his father. No matter what Joel did, it seemed like his father was disappointed with him all the time. He thought that Joel was a failure, and he would make sure that Joel knew that. All of these things in Joel's life played a part in him feeling really alone and really isolated, so he began keeping to himself even more. He was living in his own little world, keeping to himself, but quickly his own little world became very, very disturbing. He didn't have anything that he felt he was good at. He didn't have anything that he liked to do. He didn't have anyone to hang out with. His life at home was terrible. He basically just had himself and his free time. And with his free time, he grew an obsession with girls. And stay with me here, okay, because I can't say the word, but he grew an obsession with girls who worked in the streets. Are you picking up what I'm putting down? Joel grew an obsession with these women, and he began to start fantasizing about what he would do to them. And he would internalize these fantasies until one day he went out on the streets, he found one of these girls to be intimate with him, and then he did it again and again and again. This was shortly after graduating high school and right as he started college, so around 1977. And suddenly, that was all he was doing. It became his fixation. He was skipping classes. He was barely showing up to his part-time jobs. He was spending most of his time and his money on that lifestyle. And the obsession left him nearly broke and constantly moving in and out of his parents' house. Throughout the 1980s, he also jumped from one college to the next, struggling with poor grades before finally dropping out in 1984. Joel's obsession with being intimate with women quickly turned dark. It got really scary really fast, and his fantasies were now what they had been, but now incorporating extremely disturbing and harmful behavior. He wanted to hurt them, and he wouldn't be able to fight off these fantasies for long, and sooner than later he would turn them into a reality. In 1987, Joel's father passed away. He was living at his parents' house, but now it was only him, his mother, and his sister. And by March of 1989, Joel would bring his fantasies to life. One night in March of 1989, while his mother was away on a business trip, Joel picked up a young woman who was going by the name of Susie, who was working in the streets. He brought her back to his Long Island home, and his twisted urges took over. Almost immediately after they were intimate, he picked up a big heavy metal object and went after her with force, over and over again until she was gone. Now Joel was standing in his family home, standing over his first victim, and then he took a nap. In the middle of trying to figure out how he was going to clean up the horror scene that he had just created, he took a nap, a 6-hour nap. Sorry, because how do you just doze off and decide to take a quick little rest in the middle of that? When he woke up, he decided his best bet was going to be to take the body apart into pieces, and he went to disturbing lengths to erase her identity, removing her fingerprints and all of her teeth. He placed her head into an oil paint can and put the rest of her in trash bags. He loaded the trash bags inside of his mother's car, drove to the woods in New Jersey and disposed of her legs, then drove to a river and disposed of her head. But despite his efforts to try and hide what he had done, a man came across the paint can, and he opened it up and saw Susie's head inside of it. He, of course, immediately reported this to authorities, but tragically, investigators would not be able to identify the victim. Because Joel had removed every single one of her teeth, they also had no clue and no leads as to who could have possibly done this, and just like that, Joel got away with it. An entire year passed before Joel would claim his second victim, a woman named Julie Blackbird, who he also picked up on the street. Just like he did before, he waited until his mother was away before bringing Julie back to his house in Long Island. The next morning, Joel grabbed a table leg and completely lashed out on Julie with it until she tragically lost her life. He took her body apart just like he had done previously, but this time he placed the remains into buckets. He weighed them down with concrete and disposed of them in the East River in a canal in Brooklyn. 9 months later, in 1991, Joel picked up Barbara Jacobs. He did the same thing to her as he had done to the previous two. She was now his third victim. Afterwards, Joel put Barbara's body into a huge cardboard box, disposed of the box in a river. However, this time around, he had decided to leave the body intact, all in one piece, and very quickly someone found the box floating in the river. They saw the body. They were horrified, but authorities yet again were not able to identify who the victim was, and Joel got away with it for a third time. In September of 1991, Joel did the same thing again to 22-year-old Mary Ellen DeLuca, but this time he did it in a motel. He disposed of her body by placing it in a truck and leaving it in a parking lot, and by the time that her body was discovered, authorities were not able to identify who the victim was. Weeks later, Joel took the life of 31-year-old Yun Lee and disposed of her body in the East River. When her body was found, she was identified luckily, but authorities still had no leads. They had no idea who they were looking for in connection to her case. A few days before Christmas, Joel acted again, ending the life of 28-year-old Lorraine. He placed her body in a 55-gallon oil drum and disposed of it in Coney Island Creek. Her body would remain undiscovered for 6 months. He did the same thing again to 39-year-old Mary Ann, whose remains were also discovered inside of an oil drum in Coney Island Creek. Joel later claimed there were another 2 victims who he disposed of in oil drums, although he couldn't remember their names, nor could he remember the timelines of when he did it. Joel's final victim was a woman called Tiffany. She was originally from Louisiana, but she had moved to New York chasing her dreams of becoming an actress. Sadly, instead, she fell down the wrong path and began using substances and eventually found herself working in the streets. In the early hours of June 24th, 1993, Tiffany became Joel's second victim of that night and his 4th victim in just 2 days. He picked her up on Allen Street and drove to the New York Post parking lot, where he cut off her air supply with his hands until she was no longer alive. Afterwards, he drove to East Meadow, stopping on the way to pick up rope and a tarp while Tiffany's body laid in the back seat. When he got back to his mother's house, he wrapped her up in the tarp and placed her body in the trunk of his mother's car. Shortly after his mom got back home, she requested the keys to her car, and then she took the car and went on a 30-minute shopping spree, completely unaware that in the trunk of her vehicle there was a body. Joel during that time was freaking out, thinking that his mother might find the body, but she didn't. She never opened that trunk. And when she got back, Joel moved Tiffany's body into their cluttered garage, placing her in a wheelbarrow. For the next 3 days, Joel worked fixing up his pickup truck in his garage, casually outside in the heat, as the body was slowly decomposing inside of the garage. After those 3 days, he was heading out to dispose of the body. He was around 15 miles away from his house when 2 state troopers pulled him over for a missing rear license plate. When police tried to pull him over, Joel kept driving. I guess he thought, if I stop, maybe they will go away. If I pretend that I don't see them, maybe they'll drive past me. But they didn't. They just kept chasing him. They chased him for 20 minutes until Joe accidentally crashed his car into a utility pole right outside of the local courthouse. And the chase was over. As officers approached his vehicle, they noticed a foul, strong smell coming from the trunk. The source of the smell was Tiffany's decomposing body. Joel Rifkin was immediately arrested and taken into custody. When he was taken into custody, authorities are thinking, okay, he is one victim. We found the victim's body in the trunk. But Joel takes a seat. He takes a seat and tells them that he is ready to chat. And he sits there for 8 hours and confesses to ending the lives of 17 women. He described all 17 in disturbing detail, writing out the names of the victims which he remembered, which were not all, and even sketching maps to help the police find the victims that were still missing. Joel Rifkin confessed to taking 17 lives, but only 10 to 12 of his victims were ever positively identified. The rest sadly remain as unidentified Jane Does. Many body parts were found in various states of decomposition, dumped in places like rivers, wooded areas, and oil drums around New York and New Jersey. When his trial began, listen to this, when his trial began, even though he literally sat there for 8 hours and confessed, he pled not guilty. But of course, he was found guilty. However, they were only able to convict him of 9 counts of second-degree murder. But in 1994, he was sentenced to 203 years in prison. Joel, today, is still alive. He's 66 years old and remains behind bars in New York. Yeah, sick guy. I don't know what else to say. I'm disgusted. That is all I have for today's story. Thank you guys for spending time with me today. I hope you guys are having the best day. If not, go do something to make it the best day. Go listen to the newest episode of the podcast if you haven't already, linked in my bio. But yeah, I love you guys so much, and I will see you in my next video. Massive kiss on the forehead to every single one of you.
This 3-year-old girl walked into a hospital with a knife sticking out of her head. August 15th of this year, a 3-year-old girl calmly walked into a hospital with her mom in Yunnan, China. Surveillance video captured a 3-year-old girl holding her mother's hand while they were walking towards a hospital with a fruit knife that was about 15 centimeters long lodged in the back of her skull right above her right ear. At that point, you would think they would be freaking out, but no, they just calmly walked into the hospital. Once the two went inside, the mom told hospital staff that a knife had accidentally flown into her daughter's head while she was changing the bed sheets. When this had happened, she tried to pull the knife from her daughter's head but wasn't able to. Instead of calling an ambulance right away, she just calmly took her daughter to the hospital herself. Medical staff were very stunned that this 3-year-old was acting very calm and not panicking at all. The neurosurgical team performed a craniotomy and carefully removed the knife from her skull. The procedure was a success mostly because of the softness of a young child's skull, which prevented more severe damage. A doctor noted that the blade stopped just 2 centimeters from a major artery, which meant even a slight shift could have led to fatal bleeding. It was later revealed that the knife didn't go flying as the mom had stated. The mom had actually picked up the knife to scare her daughter during a tantrum and unintentionally stabbed her. Local police ruled this incident as an accident and claimed that there was no criminal intent in this case.
I remember a while back, it was years ago, I have to remember exactly when the documentary came out, but I remember watching a documentary about this case, and I remember being shocked. My jaw was on the floor. I could not believe what I was listening to. And I bet a lot of you guys watched the same documentary, so I want to talk about this case today and get your thoughts on this case. More than anything, it breaks my heart. Conrad Henry Roy III was born and raised in a small town in Massachusetts. He was the oldest of 3 siblings and grew up surrounded by sports. He honestly seems like the kind of guy that was just good at everything that he did. He was also very academically gifted. He graduated at the top of his class. And Conrad often spent time working alongside of his father and his grandfather at the family's marine towing business. And I think it's safe to say that he really did enjoy that. He was passionate about it for sure. Because as soon as he was able to, as soon as he was old enough to be able to, he got his license to be able to drive boats. And honestly, it wasn't a surprising thing at all. That boy was meant to live by the ocean. He loved water. His grandfather even recalled taking him out on a boat when he was only weeks old. And by the time that he earned his captain's license, it almost felt like a badge of honor to him. He was accepted into college, but he decided to stay at home to be close to his family and to stay in the community that he knew and loved. But beneath all of his achievements, Conrad was dealing with something much harder. He struggled deeply with social anxiety and depression. He spoke openly about it and always said that he just had a really hard time feeling comfortable in his own skin. He felt like he was just born wired differently. At only 17 years old, Conrad sadly tried to unalive himself, but luckily he had confided in someone, or at the very least hinted at the fact, and that person was so worried about him that they contacted police and they were able to find him, and luckily they got there in time to save his life. In 2012, when Conrad was 16 years old, he met 15-year-old Michelle Carter. They actually met in Florida while both of them were on vacation there, and they developed little crushes for each other, and when they found out that they both lived in Massachusetts, they decided that they were going to give this whole relationship thing a shot. Although their relationship was mostly long short distance because Michelle lived around an hour drive away from Conrad, they were going to give it a shot, and the two of them started dating. Most of their relationship was through the phone, basically. They communicated through messages and emails with only a handful of in-person visits, but the two of them did have things in common. Michelle was also seen as a super friendly, outgoing, smart girl, but she as well struggled with her own mental health issues. She struggled with anxiety and depression herself, and that became really evident when Michelle was only a young girl. She often felt a pressure to be perfect and act perfect, and it left her feeling very isolated and very lonely. That being said, her relationship with Conrad was complicated because it was so intense and so deeply intertwined by struggles that they both faced. They leaned on each other in ways that were both helpful, but at sometimes harmful. Their conversations were intense, they were raw, they were filled with moments of weaknesses from both of them. But Conrad, battling his anxiety and depression, found in Michelle someone who seemed to really care for him, someone that he could open up to and he could rely on. Michelle, dealing with her own mental health struggles, tried to be a somewhat steady presence for him, offering words of encouragement, trying to be there for him as much as she could. They talked about it all the time. They were very open with their feelings and they tried to be there for each other. Conrad more than once brought up the idea to Michelle about unaliving himself, and he told her that he was considering doing it again, and Michelle would try and be there for him and encourage him not to do it and encourage him to instead get professional help. She would tell him that he was so young and he had so much to live for, and said that his family and friends would be heartbroken if he left, so he should stay. July 12th of 2014 was a Saturday. That day, Conrad spent the entire day with his family at the beach, and that evening he told his mom that he was going to go over to a friend's house and wasn't going to be home in time for dinner. The next next morning. When his mom realized that Conrad never made it back home, she panicked and she called police immediately. She gave them a description of his truck, and it did not take long for them to find it. They found it parked in a Kmart parking lot, and seating in the front seat was Conrad's lifeless body. Conrad had unalived himself by sitting in his truck with the engine running, leading to a fatal buildup of carbon monoxide. When his family were given the news, they were in pieces. I mean, I can't even begin to imagine the kind of thoughts that would run through your head when you get news that heavy. It hit them all very hard. And they all knew that they were going to have a really hard time learning how to mourn this person that they loved so much for the rest of their lives. In the days following his passing, Conrad's family members discovered letters and messages that shed light on the kind of headspace that he was in. Among these letters were some that he had written to Michelle Carter throughout their relationship, including one found shortly after his death that expressed his deep feelings of pain and confusion. These letters revealed how much he was struggling internally and just how complicated their whole relationship had gotten. Prior to finding these letters, Conrad's family members did not really know who Michelle was at all. They didn't know what kind of relationship they had, but they realized that this girl was someone who had been there for Conrad and helped him through a lot of his struggles, so they were thankful for her. And because of that, his family ended up creating a relationship with Michelle, and they would often communicate and talk about Conrad and how much they loved him and missed him. They were grieving together pretty much until they weren't. Because Michelle's behavior got a little bit out of line, a little bit concerning, she asked Conrad's parents if she could have some of his ashes, and they were like, hold on, girl, we just met you. We literally just found out who you were. This is a little bit much. And she slowly but surely started becoming overbearing to the family, really. And then authorities went through Conrad's phone, and they realized that his loving girlfriend wasn't all that loving after all. It turns out she had been fully encouraging Conrad's passing, encouraging him to unalive himself. Some of the messages that she wrote to him, and honestly, these don't even show the degree of just how much she was encouraging him to do it, but just to give you an idea, some of the messages said, quote, "You need to do what you want to do, no matter what anyone says. Just do it. You can't keep backing out. I'm here for you, but you have to make the choice. You're being selfish. Just do it. It's your time to go. You have to do it. You are going to just get it over with. I'm not going to let you chicken out. You're going to, it's what you want, so just do it. There's a point that comes when there isn't anything anyone can do to save you, not even yourself, and you've hit that point. You keep pushing it off. You said you were going to do it tonight, and now you're saying eventually. I bet you're going to be like, oh, it didn't work because I didn't tape the tube right or something like that. You always seem to have an excuse. It's probably the best time now because everyone's sleeping. Just go somewhere in your trunk, and no one's really out right now because it's an awkward time. I thought you wanted to do this. The time is right and you're ready. You just need to do it. You can't keep living this way. You just need to do it like you did it last time and not think about it and just do it. You can't keep doing this every day. And literally every single time Conrad would say an excuse as to why he didn't want to go through with it, whether the excuse was that he was scared or he was worried that his family would be left heartbroken and they would miss him, Michelle would turn around and remind him why he should do it and give him reasons as to why he needed to do it. And she was aggressive about it too. She made him at times even feel guilty when he didn't go through with it. And the day that it happened, Michelle talked him through the entire thing. She told him how to do it, where to do it, what time to do it, where to go and park his truck, and asked him over and over and over and over again, over 40 times when he was actually going to do it, and made him promise that he was actually going to go through with it. She told him there was no more pushing it off, that he had to do it that day, and Conrad did. He drove to the empty parking lot. He rolled up his windows. He called Michelle, who stayed on the phone with him as he waited for the carbon monoxide to fill his car. And within 20 minutes, Conrad was gone. We later find out that afterwards, Michelle texted her friends. Those messages said things such as, quote, "I just want him to do it. I can't take this anymore. Sometimes you have to push people to do what's best for them, even if it's hard. I feel like I'm the only one who understands what he's going through. It's messed up, but I think he's better off gone. I'm scared, but also relieved that this might finally be over." And the night that it happened, she texted one of her friends saying, "He just called me and there was a loud noise like a motor and I heard moaning. I think he just killed himself." She then said, "It's my fault. Like, honestly, I could have stopped him. I was on the phone with him when he got out of the truck because it was working and he got scared, and I told him to get back in the truck. I told him to get back in, Sam. I knew he would do it all over again the next day, and I couldn't have him live the way he was living anymore. I couldn't do it. I wouldn't let him," end quote. And when Michelle was nervous that law enforcement would get a hold of Conrad's phone and go through the text messages, Michelle texted her friend saying, quote, "Sam, the police read my messages with him. I'm done. His family will hate me. me and I can go to jail, end quote. The investigators reading these messages were absolutely baffled. The messages revealed a disturbing pattern, one that raised serious questions about Michelle's role in Conrad's passing. And when it came time to speak to Michelle, law enforcement approached her carefully but firmly. They wanted to understand her side of the story. They wanted to hear what she had to say. During her interview, Michelle Carter appeared to be calm and composed. That was until the investigators brought up the text messages that she sent to Conrad. She admitted that she did encourage him, but said that she never intended for anything to happen. Michelle Carter claimed that she was trying to help him in her own way, even though some of her messages were harsh. She told investigators that she believed pushing Conrad was helping him face his struggles rather than giving into them. Michelle Carter was arrested February 5th of 2015. She was 17 years old at the time. She was charged with involuntary manslaughter in connection to her boyfriend's passing. Prosecutors argued that her text messages and phone calls, particularly urging Conrad to go through with it, directly contributed to his death. Her trial began in June of 2017. And prosecutors argued that Michelle fully encouraged Conrad to unalive himself, and she sealed his fate when she told him to get back in the truck after he told her that he was having second thoughts. Her own text messages after his passing, including the one where she admitted that she could have stopped him, ended up becoming key evidence in the trial. The defense said that Michelle was a troubled teen herself, dealing with her own mental illnesses, that she was medicated, and that she claimed that she never meant for any of this to happen. After a week of testimony, the judge found Michelle guilty of involuntary manslaughter. She was sentenced to 2.5 years in prison, but her sentence was later changed to 15 months in jail and 5 years of probation. However, she was released early after only serving 11 months. Conrad Roy was a brother. He was someone's son. He was someone's best friend. And his story is a tragic reminder that words can affect someone just as deeply as actions can. That is all I have for today's video. Let me know your thoughts on this case. I'm very curious, but I hope you guys are having the best day. If not, go do something to make it the best day. Remember to please check in on your friends. Take care of yourselves. I love you guys so, so much. I will see you in my next video. Massive kiss on the forehead to every single one of you.
This is the story of Tavisha Logan. May 11th, 2009, Tavisha gave birth to her premature daughter, Chantasia Gardner. They got some names on them. We just gonna call Tavisha her last name, Logan. The baby was so premature that the hospital decided to keep her. They released her at the end of July of that same year at the healthy weight of 8 pounds. October 18th of that same year, Logan goes to visit her mom, and her mother notices that the baby is really tiny. She told her she should take her to the doctor just to make sure everything is okay, and Logan told her mother that she was just at the doctor, and the doctor says she was a healthy 8 pounds. Her mother like, you need to go again just to make sure, and Logan kind of shrugs her off. About a week later, Logan is looking at her baby girl like, she is looking kind of small. So she decided to go ahead and make that appointment. Her appointment was set for November 2nd of that year. November 1st, around 6 a.m., baby girl was found unresponsive. Logan and her child's father, Chauncey Gardner, she's 25, he's 27 at the time. They called the police, and when the police got there, they could not believe their eyes. 5-month-old Chantasia, ribs were showing, her backbones were showing, her eyes were sunken in. 5-month-old Chantasia was pronounced dead before 7 a.m. Now let me just tell y'all about these two. They have 3 children together, but between both of them, 12 children. 5 children lived in the home with them, but between the two, 12 kids. Now, during interrogation, the police asked Logan, how many times did you feed your child? She said every 3 to 3.5 hours, but the police found that hard to believe because it was only 1 can of Enfamil in the house. It was more beer than milk. Then the investigators asked her, well, how much formula did you feed your child? She said she fed that child a 1/2 ounce of formula mixed with 1.5 to 2 ounces of water. Now, I don't have children, but those measurements sound crazy. The instructions on the back of the Enfamil can said it's supposed to be an equal amount of Enfamil and water. Logan says she never read the back of the can. It don't even matter. They have 10 children. 10 living, breathing children. She knows how to make a bottle, man. When questioned on why she didn't take the baby to the doctor as soon as she noticed that she had dropped weight, she said it was hard to find a doctor to take the type of Medicaid that she had. They asked her about the doctor visit she told her mom that she went to, and she admitted that she lied to her mother just to get her mother off of her back. Logan said she didn't want to go through the ER because she was afraid that they were going to contact child services, and she didn't want to lose her other children. So she just decided to make a doctor's appointment. She really didn't see a big deal in her daughter's weight because she's always been a small child. But the autopsy report showed that there was nothing in that baby's stomach. There was nothing in that baby's colon, not even liquid. Now, the police are confused at this point because it wasn't like they were hurting for food. They had food in the refrigerator, in the cabinet. The place was well kept, but it was just no milk. She was getting food stamps. She was in some women's group that gave away food to the less fortunate if needed. They even found a $675 check she got just for her baby girl that was never cashed. We never got a clear answer as to why their baby died of starvation. Logan said that she didn't think it was that bad. Yeah, she was a little small, but her weight was normal to her, because when baby girl left the hospital at 2 months, she was 8 pounds. At the time of her death, at 5 months, she was barely 5 pounds. Logan's trial started July of 2012, and the pictures of the baby was shown in the courtroom, and that was all she wrote. She was sentenced to life without the possibility of parole. Now, Chauncey was sentenced to 30 years. Why he got such a lesser sentence, I don't know. I didn't really see even much about him. All I seen was that he was sentenced to 30 years. Now, my question for my people: should they both been locked away forever?
Kealana Turner's body has just been found a year after she mysteriously disappeared, and only 900 feet from where her car was found abandoned. This story is incredibly heartbreaking. So, 28-year-old Kealana disappeared on March 10th, 2023. The night before she disappeared, she was staying with a friend in Silsbee, Texas, but when that friend left for work, Kealana appeared lost and confused. She reached out to a friend in Austin and told him that she didn't know where she was, so it's believed that she was planning on driving to Austin. But later that day, she ended up at a house in Tomball, Texas, and fell asleep in her car in the driveway. The woman who owned the house didn't know Kealana at all, and when she refused to leave the driveway, the woman called the police. When police arrived, they tried to open up her door, but Kealana backed up and almost hit one of the deputies. She then crashed into a fence on the front lawn. A deputy then grabbed a 2x4 piece of wood and broke in Kealana's driver's side window, which made her drive off, and she ended up crashing into a wooded area about a mile away. She then got out and started running barefoot into the woods, leaving behind her purse and phone. This was the last time that she was ever seen alive. Her family says that she was having a mental health crisis, likely from a recent change in medication. Kealana had cardiac issues as well as asthma, but she also had PTSD, and she was recently prescribed a different medication for that. Her family believes that she may have had a bad reaction to the new meds, and in the 4 days before she went missing, she had hardly slept at all. So when she woke up in that woman's driveway, she was disoriented and likely in a fight or flight mode. Over the year that Kealana was missing, there were multiple searches for her, but it was like she vanished into thin air. That is until April 19th of this year, when Texas EquiSearch was conducting a search for her on a private property in Magnolia. This was actually supposed to be their final search for her, but during that final search, they stumbled across human remains in a heavily wooded area, and after comparing dental records, it was confirmed that the remains belonged to Kealana. What's incredibly sad is that her body was found only 900 feet from where her car was found abandoned a year ago. Her cause of death is still being determined, but authorities say no foul play is suspected. Kealana's family says that the day she went missing, authorities treated her like a fugitive and didn't realize that she was in the middle of a mental health crisis. Instead, they reacted to her in such a hostile way, and it's left many wondering, had they realized that she was in the middle of a mental health crisis, if this would have turned out any different. Authorities were telling the family and putting out information that just wasn't true, which included sightings of Kealana. And it really seems like authorities just didn't take the case seriously from the very beginning. Just by looking at the Facebook page created to help finding her, it's so clear how much Kealana was loved by everyone. She was a person that was filled with love and kindness, and there there truly was just no one like her. I'm wishing her family nothing but peace and healing during this horrible time, and I'm hoping that more answers will come to light.
This is the story of Robert Fisher. Scottsdale, Arizona, 1998. Robert and his wife Mary, 11-year marriage, took a turn for the worse. The marriage got so bad, Robert told his friends that he was considering suicide because Mary wanted to divorce him. Their arguments were so bad and loud that their neighbors could hear. So the two decided to go to their pastor for marital counseling. And it worked for a little while until December of 2000. Robert would frequent this massage parlor. He used to get back massages due to his back injury from when he was a firefighter. But this particular visit, Robert met a young lady who just happened to be a prostitute. The two had a one-night stand, which resulted in Robert catching a STD. He was ill for several days, but he hid the STD from Mary. She knew about his infidelities. That was one of the main reasons why she wanted to divorce his ass. But Robert did not believe in divorce. After this last infidelity, he told his hunting buddies that he was going to renew his vows, get on the straight and narrow, because he could not live without his family. Now, I didn't see any evidence of a marriage renewal, but on April 9th, 2001, after his work shift, Robert picked up his 12-year-old daughter and took her to her junior honor society. She was getting honored for her academic achievements, but during the ceremony, Robert was kind of irritated, impatient. He told Brittany, "Let's go." She didn't even get a chance to get her certificates. Meanwhile, Mary was taking their 10-year-old son, Robert Jr., to a gun safety class. The two returned home later that evening. At around 10 p.m. that night, the neighbors heard the couple arguing, and around 8:30 a.m. the next day, the Fisher's house explodes. The explosion was so massive, it knocked down 2 of the brick walls. It also shook their neighbors' houses. This alerted the police immediately, of course, but after the smoke cleared, it was only 3 bodies, not 4. Robert was missing. But after further investigation, they noticed that Mary had a bullet lodged in the back of her head, but all 3 victims' throats were cut from ear to ear. They said the cuts were so bad, all their heads was damn near decapitated. Looking deeper into the explosion, investigators noticed that it happened due to a gas line being pulled from the back of the furnace. The accumulating gas was later ignited by a candle lit by Robert before he left. This is Robert at an ATM at around 10:45 to 11 p.m. driving his wife Mary's Toyota 4Runner. Arizona's police department is on a manhunt for Robert, but they can't find anything until April 20th, 10 days after the murder. The Toyota 4Runner turned up in Young, Arizona, about 100 miles away from Scottsdale. But Robert was not in it. The truck was wiped clean. The hat that he had on at the ATM was inside of the car, but their family dog was laying on the passenger side outside of the car. He was still alive. Now, the area where the Toyota was dumped at is actually a forest. They said it's a lot of caves in that forest, but the police searched 1 cave out of a dozen. These ain't no ordinary cave. They formed a complex underground network. They extend for miles and miles under the surface. So for them to only search 1, man, come on. On July 19th, a state arrest warrant was issued in Phoenix, charging Robert with 3 counts of first-degree murder and 1 count of arson. Robert was declared a fugitive. On June 29, 2002, the FBI named him the 475th fugitive to be placed on the top 10 most wanted list. They just took Robert off that list in 2021. Robert has never been found. It's been calls of sightings of men who look like him, but nothing never came about. It was speculation that he might have committed suicide right after the murders, but I personally don't think so. What do y'all think? Do y'all think Robert is still alive, out here living his life? If so, he'll be about 67, 68. Me personally, I think he's still alive. What do y'all think?